and people may still be trickling in. First question is, who was not at the first workshop? Okay, quite a few of you, so this is good because, well, it's an apology for those people who attended the first workshop because I will use a tiny little bit of repetition. I'll try to keep it as little as possible, but sometimes repetition is good. So the most important points from last week we may repeat. So this particular workshop, we're going to try to make it a little bit more interactive. Last workshop we covered a little bit of philosophy, as you know. So I think you all have a little piece of paper or a pad or something like that. Some student asked me whether it was necessary to have an idea for a business or a venture concept for these workshops to make more sense. It's not necessary, but if you have an idea, you may want to jot it down in a kind of a concise one-sentence way. When we get to the interactive portion of the workshop, we may be asking you and putting you on the spot a little bit about what type of an idea you have. So no limitations on the ideas. They can be high-tech, they can be a lifestyle company, it can be a non-profit, social, we really don't care. Anything that you like is fine. So, today's workshop is about creativity and ideation. And what I will do in the workshop is jump straight to the methodologies that great entrepreneurs use in finding good venture concepts to work on. And initially it may seem like this is a little bit mechanistic. You know, because we call this a workshop, I suspect that the expectation is to find something that will work for you right away. But, so I'll go through each of these and give you examples and so on, as far as a workshop, practically oriented workshop is concerned. But it's better for us not to lose sight of the big picture. I mean, why is it that we're going through this exercise is also important. If we just strictly stick to the mechanical aspects of things, then we will not be able to create as much value as we might be able to create. So the name of the game is to create something that has value to somebody, which seems obvious enough, and then to deliver that value to somebody. So what happens at our universities sometimes is that scientists will discover something, but it will sit there in the lab. If you don't deliver that value over to somebody else, then we have not completed the loop, right? We have to create the value, we need to deliver that value. The third point is an interesting one, then we extract value out of that creation of that value, which in a simple sense is profit, right? So profit can be used in multiple ways to buy a Corvette or you know, make you happy in one way or another. But eventually you discover that these are things that you're using to prove yourself to other people. Once you get to a stage where, this is particularly for the students, when you're able to say to yourself, I have nothing left to prove to anybody, including myself, then the Lamborghini is just for yourself, not to show off, right? So all of you, I hope, as students are trying to get to a stage where you're going to say, I have nothing left to prove to myself or to anybody else. When you get to that stage, and young people are getting to that stage earlier and earlier, the purpose of extracting the value turns out to be to create more value. Imagine yourselves as the business, right? So you're going to school, you're learning things, you're creating value within yourself. And initially you're saying to yourself, with this value I'm going to go and get a great job and, you know, make lots of money. But in a continuous learning environment, you will get and build up even more value in yourself so that you can become a more impactful person. So I want you to think about, you know, the formation of this loop is what we're about, and this stuff is just the mechanical aspects of how we can get there. But the big picture is this one. Now, for those of you who are coming in for the first time to this workshop, these series of workshops, so the idea was we would make these workshops build on top of one another so that they're not isolated workshops that you can come to one if you want to learn about, typically the workshops are organized like, I'll come to this one and I'll learn about patents and intellectual property. Then I'll go to this one and I'll learn about financials. These series of workshops build on top of one another. So if you miss one, then you will have a difficult time being able to catch what was being talked about. If you're learning physics and you miss the freshman course and go straight into the sophomore course, you're not going to be very effective. So our approach here is similar to that. And the glue that connects these series of workshops is a platform that consists of 3 layers. From the simplest layer, which is targeted towards people who say that I have no idea about business, none whatsoever, to those who say I'm very sophisticated, I already raised $2 million from angel investors. So we have tools that I'm going to share with you now and throughout the series of courses, whereby we can say, what level are you at? Here's the tool, use it. If you say this tool is too simple, why did you give this tool to me? We have more sophisticated tools. The most sophisticated tool, this one, I have yet to see any startup say, this tool is too simple for me, I don't need this. This is a complex and powerful tool that we've been using in real life as angel investors, both in making investment decisions as well as in monitoring our portfolio companies. Now, I may have mentioned in the first workshop, I have the same fear that I will impose on you, which is, don't call my baby ugly syndrome, right? So if you have an idea, then human nature is such that you'll fall in love with the idea, and anybody who calls the idea not a good idea, then you'll hate them and you'll kind of get defensive. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening to me. I really love these tools because those tools are my beautiful babies, but I've trained myself to thicken my skin and to love being proven wrong and love debate. So part of what I love about these tools is that they are applicable. Unfortunately, Claire is not here. I received permission from Claire. Hold on 2 seconds. I received permission. Are you representing Claire? Or?
Oh no, I was just wondering if we could somehow turn the lights.
Oh yeah, sure. Dim the lights? How's this?
Yeah.
Okay. Now it got really dark, but you pick your poison. So, is this halfway? Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to understand and read all of this yet. The point that I'm making is that one of the students or one of the participants in this workshop took the leap and took the most complicated spreadsheet and applied it to her venture concept. And we worked on it a little bit together. The reason why I'm showing this is because the tool seems to be applicable to what we would call lifestyle companies. So she wants to develop a consulting company just for herself, just to make enough money to get by, to make a living. All the way from there to pharmaceutical startup, medical startup, non-profit, restaurant. This tool is extremely flexible in terms of being able to assess how you're predicting the future and whether we should have any anticipation that the future will turn out the way you predicted it. So what this tool does, those of you who are not at the first workshop, it asks you to put numerical assumptions and it calculates for you a series of sanity checks. And I'll describe what I mean by that in a second, but for this consulting lady, it gives her an expectation of what type of profits she should anticipate as a consulting firm, only on the basis of the assumptions that she made. And then the tool goes on to provide balance sheet, cash flow, exit sanity check, monetization sanity check, revenue growth, etc., etc. A long series of sanity checks, and I'll tell you what I mean by sanity check, but when she changes just one single cell in here, one single assumption, the entire worksheet will work itself through and update everything so that you can do what-if scenarios, for example. So what was the methodology about thinking about this tool? Again, I may have mentioned in the first workshop, I apologize for that, but the idea is this. A life insurance company can tell with fairly precise accuracy whether you, sir, will be alive 5 years from now or not. How do they do that? By looking at people like you, many, many of them, and then they can predict whether you'll be alive or dead in 5 years. Now, why don't we apply this methodology and this thinking to startups? Why don't we apply a thinking that says, if we look at similar firms like yours that have survived the 4 or 5 years, and we have a database of their performance metrics, when you come to us with your projections, we'll compare it to similar companies like yours and see what their performance metrics were so that we can predict whether you will be a healthy company 5 years down the line, a live company 5 years down the line or not. So when I say we're doing sanity checks, we're comparing you against what companies that survived for 4 years have experienced in real life. Give you some examples, all the way from the complex. Let's take a medical device. How long did it take companies to get a non-invasive medical device through the FDA on the average? We will now apply that metric to your company because that's the mean. If you're an outlier, then you have some convincing to do. Pharmaceutical companies, what happens is that they finish, there's phase 1 clinical trials, phase 2 clinical trials, phase 3 clinical trials, and their valuation increases as they go through those phases of clinical trials. That bump in the valuation goes into the database of similar companies on a vertical by vertical basis. In other words, we have lots of buckets that we put companies into, and if your company falls into this bucket, what has happened to prior companies? So benchmarking. So we're building, this is the glue. When we talk about strategy, we'll be talking about this. When we talk about validation, we'll be talking about this. We're building up to all of you, not just Claire here, being able to completely understand how this is structured, how to enter numbers into it, how to interpret everything that you're saying, that this system is building. In other words, we don't want a situation where I push the numbers into the black box spurts out these numbers and I have to believe these numbers. No, we want you to all understand what the changes, which assumptions are impacting these numbers that you see on a profit and loss statement. So that's the glue that's tying the series of workshops together. Any questions on this? This is the most complex one, but we have 2 layers of far less complexity. The first one is the one that has the least complexity. So anybody who's never heard the word business will be able to go through the first tool, use the first tool. It's written in completely layman language that anybody can understand. It asks some questions, it gives some multiple choice answers. The answers are very, very simple to choose from, but they're all leading to the tough questions that this one will be asking. Except that in this one we'll use proper terminology, and instead of millions and millions, in this case we'll ask, what is your exact market size? 450,000 in the United States. And then describe that market. People over 65 making more than $100,000 a year, etc., etc. So we will lead towards precision and reduction of uncertainty. And all these tools are designed in a way to map onto social, commercial, nonprofit, lifestyle, big enterprise, scalable, non-scalable. They're all designed in that fashion. Is it perfect? Not at all, and I need all of your help and actually the university's help in making the terminology just right for each of these areas that I quoted to you. So now I'll give you a few seconds to warm up your creative brain cells, which is going to be necessary. So I could watch this for a long time, but I hate squeezing fluff into the classroom. Now the reason why I showed this is the following. First, to appreciate the genius of Mozart, right? He was able to visualize all this stuff in his head. If one note was out of place, you would detect it, your ear would detect it. He had the genius of constructing what you just saw. It's incredible to me. And why am I showing that to you? In the first workshop, I showed this to you. I said that hit rate in startups is incredibly low. And the reason why it's low is because most of us are not capable of combining analytics, cold, hard facts, with emotion, passion, and everything else that goes with it. Knowing what we don't know, not being caught up in our ego. Exercising humility, yet self-confidence, those types of things. That is why I think, in my opinion, accounts for the very low success rate of startups. It's easier to handle this. It's much more difficult to handle this and this at the same time. If you have a perfect handle on this, but cannot understand this, you will fail. If you have a perfect understanding of this, but you can't handle this, you will fail. So either you have to surround yourself with people who can deliver both sides, or you have to have both sides within you. And music, you would think, what does music have to do with business and entrepreneurship and innovation, is the ultimate example of the bringing together of the two sides, emotion and reason. So this is the mindset that you have to put yourselves in order to win at this incredibly difficult game of innovation and of entrepreneurship. So now I'll jump straight into some very mechanical things, okay? As you can tell, I really like trying to think deeply about things, which really benefits you even when you become an entrepreneur or an innovator. I would recommend that you do so, and then coupled with the mechanical aspects. So, great entrepreneurs are constantly looking for opportunities, constantly scanning. They don't typically say, this is a toy that I built, and now let me find solutions, for this toy. That's not the typical methodology of a great entrepreneur. So the first thing that they do is great entrepreneurs look for a problem, looking for a solution, as opposed to coming up with a solution and then looking for a problem. This is the first thing. It seems, incredibly straightforward, and you're probably saying to yourself, why is he saying this? It's obvious. But you'd be amazed at the number of times that we see, all the way from, very highly qualified academics, giving us things that are solutions looking for problems. The first thing is identify the problem. Who's got the pain? And this fellow, it's a must-read, Paul Graham, from Y Combinator, the #1 accelerator in the country, I can say. It's a must-read. We'll distribute the PowerPoint. You can download it. But he says, these we have to pay attention to. By far, the most common mistake founders make is to solve problems no one has. And it's, again, as simple as don't call my baby ugly syndrome. I think, I have a problem, this is a great solution, my grandma says it's a great solution, and then there's 6 other people in the entire world, and people spend a lifetime trying to solve that problem that nobody has. This is another key quote. Ask yourself, who wants this so much that they'll use it even when it's, excuse my language, crappy version 1, made by a 2-person startup they've never heard of? If you can't answer that, the idea is probably bad. Acid test. Hit rate is extremely low. This is a difficult game, and the only way to show that you can increase your chances are by asking yourselves tough questions of this type. The second, so the first one is, feeling the pain. Yes?
I think these questions are, you'll say, yeah, everybody needs this thing because I need it. And you can say, you can answer these questions subjectively to yourself and say, yes, my idea is great. So I don't know that you can ask yourself realistically these questions.
So you can ask yourself the question, but you have to hear it from the horse's mouth eventually, and the horse is the customer. And so what is the methodology that we can deploy, a realistic methodology that we deploy? I have the problem, I think a lot of other people have the problem, I don't have any money yet, I have to show people and myself that if I build it, they will buy before I spend the money to build it. And the standard solution that the industry or thinking people have come up with is surveys. And in a survey, again, the word survey is easy, the devil is always in the details, right? So in the survey, the standard, safe methodology to use is the following. I have this, and it's much better than what you're using today. Let me describe to you, this is the survey question that needs to be very concise at the tail end. If I were to provide this to you, which is much, much better than what you're using now, how much would you be willing to pay for this? And you ask a large group of people, you take the mean number, the amount that they said they would pay. Then the second survey is, how likely are you to pay X dollars, X being the mean from the first survey, for this product that I described extremely well. And then you give them 7 options, just like we do with you on the survey. The first one is absolutely, positively, definitely yes. The second one is yes. The third one is probably, and etc., etc. You throw away everything below the absolutely, positively yes, and assume that none of those are going to actually buy when it comes time to reach for the wallet, and you discount the absolutely, definitely yes by another 20%, multiplied by 0.8. And if you have a large enough sample that you did the survey on, when you go to investors, you say, I asked 1,000 people, the results were, the ones that said absolutely, positively yes, multiplied by 0.8, 3% of the population is likely to buy, meaning, after these filtrations, said they would absolutely, definitely buy. Plus or minus, so there is, some of the principles of science do play in this stuff, even though it's, much softer, with a confidence interval based on your population size that you surveyed. Now the question is, the investor is talking to himself and he's saying, okay, now we have 2 problems. One, you demonstrated that if you can make people aware that you exist of your product, and there will be a cost associated with making people aware, then the population that you made aware, 3% of them are likely to buy your product based on your survey data. So these are the kind of mathematical engineering scientific principles we impose on startups to give us a little bit more confidence than hand-waving. I realize it was a very long answer to your question. Was it a satisfactory answer? Okay. Very good.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Can you think of any examples of companies, either recent or in the past, that made the quote-unquote mistake of solving the problem first and yet were still successful?
So created the solution and then looked for a problem. Sure. The standard examples that are given might be, did you know that you had a problem that you needed that made you want to require an iPhone? Did you know that you needed a computer? head of IBM said there's a market for 50 computers in the entire United States, etc. This is why deep thinking is necessary. One could say the same thing about Facebook, that Facebook did not solve a problem, they just created something and then it got traction. So, but deep thinking would indicate to us that there was indeed a problem of wanting to connect for the demographic that they were targeting, even if it was on a social environment and so on and so forth.
The problem was found after the product.
Yes, so it happens, but I'm putting on my investor hat now.
Sure.
The more you can demonstrate to me a problem, the more likely that you will succeed. The deeper the problem, the more likely you will succeed. The shallower the problem, the less likely you will succeed. This is all about gauging probabilities. And so you have two choices actually, right? Deep problem, few people. Shallow problem, lots of people. Putting on my investor hat, I'm much more interested in deep problem, few people, than shallow problem, lots of people. So that choice you have to make also.
So are you trying to help somebody discover that they do have a problem? So say for instance,
Sure.
Today, Ebola.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had that problem
That's right.
until people
That's
were
right.
coming over
That's
into
right.
the U.S.,
That's right. That's right. So the example I gave was, he goes to his dad and he says, everybody has an iPhone 7 except me. It really hurts. I got a huge pain. And the dad is saying you pain in the, so the creation of the problem
Right.
is a standard marketing technique. But it's better for us to start with a real problem as opposed to convincing people that they have a problem.
Just a really good case study I read about was Febreze. When they first discovered Febreze, they had a lot of trouble trying to get it to success, and they're on the verge of just canning the whole thing. And if you just look it up online, I think there are a lot
What was
of
it called?
Febreze.
Febreze,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, just look it up online.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff.
The next one is, so the pain recognition, I hear you. It seems, fairly obvious, and the types of questions that you're asking are absolutely valid questions. Now, pattern recognition is a little bit more nuanced, and I want to dwell on that one a little bit. So this is a group of students when I was at the University of Arizona. It's a company that they launched. It's called Crowd Audio. And what they wanted to do was to connect 2.6 million music bands, garage bands, with 400,000 home-based audio engineers together on a platform. Okay, so this was the idea that they had. And their business model is the musician posts a competition. He posts his raw music on the platform, and he says, hey, audio engineers, if you can mix this properly, I'll give you $150. And so people send in little snippets of the mixed music, and he says, yours is good, yours could be better, you're out of the competition, etc. So they send him a little bit more information. Eventually one guy gets the money, $150 prize money, for example, and the company gets $23 posting fee plus 15% of the prize money. The details are not so important. The big question is, how did they come up with this great idea? How did my students come up with this great idea? And they deployed pattern recognition, which is what great entrepreneurs do. So what they saw was a successful existing company called 99 Designs, $1.6 million in payouts in just 1 month. $1.6 million in payout in just 1 month. And what they do is, on one side of the platform are small businesses, on the other side of the platform are home-based graphic designers. Exactly the same model. They say, I need a logo, I have a competition for a logo. People respond with logo sketches, and they say, you're out, yours could be better, etc. The competition money goes to the winner, and they take a cut. Proven model. Exists and is successful. So the genius of the students was to say, we'll take this proven model and we'll deploy it in a virgin area. But the structure was exactly the same. So this is, again, it sounds simple, but you would be amazed at how many successful companies are created in this fashion. Another example, another group of my students also launched this company. They were at Shark Tank. They got $75,000 from Mark Cuban as an investment. So what their idea was, they will deliver little samples of coffee to coffee gourmand, is that what it's called, gourmands? People who really love, excellent coffee. Little packets of coffee every month in a little box. And then if you love this coffee, then they act as a distributor for the coffee roaster, and they ship you the entire package. So how did they come up with this great idea? Again, they looked at the marketplace. Dollar Shave Club sends razors out. Lismo Box sends organic products. And then in every industry, there is the first people who discover the business model, and that's Birchbox in this case. Birchbox was started by two Harvard ladies, very young, your age, that did the same thing as coffee, and here are the results that they had. 9 months after launch, 45,000 subscribers paying $10 per month. You can do the math. They're sending little samples of cosmetics. That's how they started. 17 months after launch, 125,000 subscribers, etc., etc. Some details. The key point here is this. So this is what they did. This is the genius of the great entrepreneur, and in this case, these students. They laid out a one-to-one map between what made Birchbox successful in the world of cosmetics and what are the similarities in the world of coffee. So women get excited about cosmetics, coffee drinkers are passionate about coffee, both are consumable, samples are provided for free. Why? In the case of coffee, roasters are all over the country and they're tiny, they want exposure to the entire US market, for example. Samples are lightweight, which was critical because shipping costs is a killer in this subscription model. Full-size products can be sold online, full-size products can be sold online. So we're looking for benchmarking again, similar to our numerical benchmarks, but this time for business model benchmarks. So this is the idea. The more you can get yourself to think about things that you see in this fashion, the more successful entrepreneurs you will be, and the more successful innovators you will be. An X is an X is an X, but when you start thinking about it, what makes an X, and deconstruct it, and look at the various items, and then reconstruct it back again in different formats to create new products. So this has tremendous cultural implications even. I was in Chile giving a workshop, and what they said was the Mayan culture had knowledge about the circle prior to Egypt, let's say. So they had a football that they used to play with, so they understood the concept of rolling. But Egyptian culture came up with the wheel before the Mayan culture, long before the Mayan culture. So Mayan culture's inability to take this leap from a football to something that rotates, a wheel, delayed Mayan culture by centuries, if not decades or centuries, behind Egyptian culture. So these are the small kind of things that make a huge impact, and alertness to this type of thinking is what we call entrepreneurial thinking. Now, to put this on paper in a format that is more rigorous than this type of format, many of you may have seen this. So again, I'll try to introduce the concept to you through an example. So we have a company. The company is called Patients Like Me. On one side of this company, there are patients with a similar disease, let's say cancer, right? And the company recognizes that the pain point is that cancer patients want to talk to other cancer patients and to share their information and so on and so forth. So the company provides a free of charge platform for cancer patients to talk to one another. And so the value that's being delivered is free community service in a sense. Now let's forget for a second about whether this is ethical and so on and so forth. The data is anonymized data, aggregated data. but they peel off the data from these conversations that are going on, and then they sell this package data to pharmaceutical companies that have products for cancer, for that type of cancer. So this would be a business model, and now what do? Now we deconstruct and reconstruct in another place. So let me give you an example. This site now, instead of patients, are people thinking about divorce. What do they need? They're scared. They don't have any information. They want to talk to other people who have gotten divorced or thinking about divorce, and we know that 50% of marriages end up in divorce. So we provide a service where people thinking about divorce can talk to one another in an anonymous fashion. We take the data, and on this side are divorce lawyers, for example, that then start answering questions that are coming up. So they build up credibility. So lawyer X has been answering these questions in a really sophisticated way. He seems to know what he's doing, and he happens to be in St. Louis. Maybe I will contact lawyer X and give him a contract, and because we enabled it in our platform, we can then now extract value from the value that we have created. So again, deconstruction and reconstruction in other places, particularly in virgin areas, but this is also particularly useful because it's the value exchange. You know, we said create value, deliver value, extract value. If you want to summarize it for your venture concept, this is a very convenient model to use. Next one is trend recognition. Feel free to interrupt me. I think I'm running fast enough already anyways. Trend recognition. So again, I want to introduce the concept to you through some examples. So trend recognition attempts to answer the two questions that we ask as angel investors to anybody who comes to us. One of them is, why you? The second one is, why now? If you can't answer those questions, then we're really not that interested in you. So this is trying to answer the why now question. So once more, this is a group of my students, undergraduates, their new venture concept project. So the thing they recognize is three trends moving in the direction that enables a company. The first one is, the interest in ebooks. The second one is everybody wants a personalized, customized product these days. I want the shirt that only I will wear and I don't want to see it on anybody else type feeling. And then the genius is that for children with autism, ebooks, digital products provide a level of comfort and safety because people are unpredictable, whereas a machine is always predictable, number one, which is appealing to children with autism. And then seeing familiar faces is also important to children with autism. So the company that they created is as follows. Mommy takes a picture of the Johnny's red truck, sends out the picture to this company. It gets converted into a cartoon and is now placed inside of a base story. So the story is the base story. In one case, it's a red truck. In another, it's a blue Volkswagen, or a red giraffe, or a purple elephant, and so on and so forth. So the book is populated with data that Mommy is sending, so that we can provide an ebook with things that the child can relate to, and we will sell this product to the parents of children with autism. So they saw a convergence and a gap, and filled in that gap. That's what I mean by trend recognition. This one is a little bit simpler. So this group, again, one of my student teams from University of Arizona, what they recognized was there were players in the 3D scanning area. What does 3D scanning mean? Like Kinect, can take a three-dimensional picture of you, essentially. There is 3D processing software that can take this image and do things with it. And then there's 3D printers that I'm sure you heard about, where you can print out a three-dimensional object by using deposition of plastic layer by layer. What they saw was that there's silos here, here, and here, but there's no company that occupies the central space where we provide a vertically integrated solution that involves both scanning and processing and printing all at the same place. Once again, trend recognition is what's at play. Trend recognition associated with another question that we asked. So the first question was, why you, why now? Another question that we're asking, if not explicitly, is, are you too early or are you too late? If you're too late, you're a me too. We hate me toos. I'm going to compete with Facebook, or anything like that, right? Me too. That's too late. Everybody else has done it already. But equally dangerous is too early. Many a company has died because the idea was too early. So the trick is, how do you take a product that is definitely too early and bring it to an application that's valid today? So yet another student team. These are all student teams, by the way, not sophisticated entrepreneurs. So what they said was, here's their pitch to investors. Can you all imagine that 20 years from now, we're going to have Band-Aids that will tell you the status of your wound. It's healed now, you can take the Band-Aid off. Intelligent Band-Aids, and we'll throw them in the garbage can because they'll be so cheap. Yes, we can imagine that's going to happen, except right now it's going to be too expensive. So that would have been considered as too early. Now the genius is to think, what application is there where a smart bandage would have enough value that people would pay for it, in terms of diabetic wound sores, for example. So a series of sensors that detect the humidity level, the acidity level, and other parameters. The sensors are available. It will be expensive, and there will be a little dongle coming out that you connect to the mobile, if you like, and it will tell you the status of the wound to the physician. So they brought something that is 20 years out to an application today where the value generated was adequate to create value, extract value, deliver value. So this is about trend recognition. I had a conversation with you, and this was an interesting conversation. So this gentleman was approached by, involved with a group that's doing three-dimensional printing of human organs. So, if you want to have a kidney, we're now beginning to develop the ability to build a three-dimensional artificial kidney using 3D printing technologies. And my response to him was, this is too early. And then the way my mind was wired over many, many years of dealing with this stuff is like automatically thinking, how can I move this closer to the present? And the idea was, when you go and have an MRI of your head, for example, the data is available to the hospital. And that data, without the patient information on it, is theoretically available for free, information available for free. So we get this three-dimensional data of a brain, of many brains, of a patient's brain with Alzheimer's, for example. And then we use a fairly sophisticated 3D printer, but one that exists today, to build a plastic replica of that brain, slice by slice. We incorporate into the slices railings so that medical students, instead of using a cadaver, can take an actual real brain with all the structure to exquisite detail, and be able to go slice by slice and analyze, this is what's happening because of the Alzheimer's, etc., and then put it back together again. So now we have a medical educational tool that is sellable now, that's buildable now, it's not too early, not too late. And I was as soon as he said that to me, my mind went to the other area of an educational tool. So I mean, there may be many flaws with this particular idea. I wouldn't bet any money on it right now. Though if you want to, we have a fund. No, I'm kidding. But the idea is, take
I'll sell it to you for $1 million right here.
$1 million.
Right here.
Done deal.
Okay.
Okay. So we love things that are, we hate things that are too late. We hate Me Too things. We're scared of too early, but automatically we will switch our mind to say, how can we make it less too early? If that makes any sense, right? To bring it back to the present. Another extremely effective tool, the slice. So the slice is a niche play. So what happens is a company comes out and wants to be everything for everybody. The best example of this is Craigslist. Craigslist is everything for everybody, and over time, everybody starts taking a slice out of that everything for everybody, and then eventually, Craigslist dissipates, and then there's all these, smaller companies that are out there. So, another one of my student teams, so housing, marketplace for housing, extremely crowded, but if you want to go to, if you're a student and you want to go to a place for housing that only caters to students and is focused completely on students, then come to leasing. So this is the slice argument. Take something that is presented as we're everything for everybody, and then make yourselves the go-to place for a small group of people, and then you'll be able to grow this thing. I'll talk to you about in the next workshop or the one after next, the strategy of what I call niches to riches. So start with a niche and move your way up. That's what I deployed in my own companies, which worked fantastically well for me. And I'll give you the details of how my methodology for thinking through these things. Now these things that sound trivially simple, when coupled with what I'm going to call deep thinking, become extremely powerful. By example again. So we have a pharmaceutical that is tested and it fails in the clinical trials. The pharma company says it failed the clinical trials, goodbye, we wasted this much, tax deduction, done. Now there's sharks, entrepreneurs who see an opportunity, who want to analyze that data and find a subset of those patients for whom the drug was effective. So the pharma does, a big test because they're trying to, find the drug that caters to everybody. They want to be the Craigslist for, heart pain, for example, right? So then they deploy the niche idea and say, for which of these patients was the drug shown to not have the side effects or shown to have efficacy, and take a second step, a second bite at the apple. So the same principle, the same model applies, it's just that we're applying it to a different area. When I say we, so I guess I should point this out. I've been an angel investor since the year 2000, so I have 15 years of history of seeing lots of applications for investment, about 400 per year. So 400 multiplied by 15, however many that makes, is the number of ideas that I've seen, and I must say that in the last few years, there's pretty much nothing I haven't seen. So when I go to a business plan competition, oh that one, oh that one, oh that one, heard that one before, heard that one before. So it's really difficult to come up with, super unique things, and because, we're dumb and simple people, we just put things into little buckets. So I don't care if it's a new energy generator or a new medical device that does wonders. To us, it's a better mousetrap. And so we have some questions associated with the category called better mousetrap. And you better be able to answer those questions for us really quickly. So we don't claim to understand the in-depth workings of the tool, but we have a set of questions that have been proven to be the right type of questions to ask when some people are presenting to us a better mousetrap. I can get into the details of what those questions are, but fundamentally, for a medical device, for instance, what is the next best, what is the gold standard? How well does yours work against the gold standard, numerically, graphically? What is the reimbursement? Is it reimbursed or is it not reimbursed? Does the government pay for it when somebody uses your device? And what is the economic argument for the hospital to buy this product based on the reimbursement and the cost of your product? Those types of things. Now, better mousetraps can be generated by everyone. Again, another student group. So this is called a spirometer, if you're familiar with it. So if you have some ailment of the chest, apparently, you use this tool to exercise your lung capacity. You blow in it and you let go. You blow in it and you let go. And this particular student apparently had this as a child, and a spirometer was given to him. And he found it extremely boring and didn't use it as a child, and it took him a long time to recover from the disease. So when he came to our class and we were thinking about, what can you build, he had the great idea of putting a basketball hoop inside the spirometer and a little basketball, and the child, as he blew in it, he would try to dunk the ball inside the basketball. And, great idea coming off of his personal experiences, and so they sent out the provisional patent application and so on. Now, deploying all the other tools that we talked about here, my question to them was, what is it that you're doing? So the initial response is, a basketball hoop and a ball, and it'll be fun for children. But what they're really doing is, I know I'm stretching it a little bit, but creating a new category called gamified medical devices for children. Now the push is to think about other applications of the principle. So isolating the principle and then deploying it in other areas, because this may not have been the best choice if you said to yourself, what can I do in the area of gamified medical devices for children? It just so happened that he stumbled onto this because of his personal experiences. Now step back and take a broader look. Okay? So now I'm going to shift a little bit towards a more, less of a formulaic approach, and put this in the context of some, hopefully a little bit of deeper thinking. So Steve Jobs went to the same school that I went to. He dropped out. It was Reed College in Portland, Oregon, which was a complete liberal arts school, an unashamed liberal arts school where you learned, Homer and Kant and so on and so forth. And they are still a college that says application, practice, putting into practice. What the heck do you mean? So they truly are a liberal arts school that teaches the humanities, period, and nothing else, and they don't care. And so when they asked Steve Jobs, what was the one course that you took that had the biggest impact on you as far as, creating Apple and so on and so forth, he said, calligraphy. So, that's a great lesson for us, right? So the guy said, calligraphy is the one course that I took that had the biggest impact. Back to, Mozart's music, right? So we cannot approach this stuff in a grunt way, in an engineering way. Without deep thinking, it's just not possible. So this is probably preaching to the choir, but these are facts. I mean, we really can take these as facts. Again, having seen 400 times 15, I can tell you that the most successful entrepreneurs are, without question, those people who have tremendous curiosity in other areas, that want to touch, connect, pull together, understand, like a little child. Why? That's what it takes to be successful in this area. So they've shown that when you're challenged with a problem that requires creative thinking, a part of the brain called the temporal gyrus region is activated. They see this in an MRI, And people have demonstrated that this temporal gyrus region is activated when the brain needs to collect information from many different centers of the brain. So this is what I'm trying to graphically depict there, and what I'm recommending to you is you deploy the same thing. In order for you to be creative, you need to pull information from all over the place, from the arts, from music, from science, from any place that you can get your hands on. And that is when innovative ideas are going to be generated. So again, going back to Steve Jobs, he says creativity is just about connecting things, and people who are able to create things are able to connect experiences they have had, and then synthesizing those experiences to create new things. All of us have experiences all the time, but few of us are able to connect these experiences together to create something new, is what he's saying. So, they had more experiences, and they have thought more about their experiences than other people. Back to this, deep thinking about the experiences that you are having. Another very important point here, I really want to differentiate between mechanistic approach versus the deep approach. Look at what Jobs is saying. The broader one's understanding of the human experience. I mean, this is a big word. Understanding of the human experience, the better design we will have. So regardless if you're doing something that looks extremely mundane, extremely formulaic, to become very successful, the requirement is to understand the human experience. Understanding the human experience also implies mundane things like being able to talk to a customer and being able to understand when that customer is bored to tears and doesn't want to listen to you anymore. If you don't understand that, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur at all. And again, I have professors coming in and they start like a machine gun, and I can't get a word in edgewise. I'm just sitting there, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just let me tell you how great I am kind of thing. And I'm saying, you do not have an understanding of the human experience. You do not understand what I'm feeling right now. I just want to run out of this room. The inertia that all of us are facing. So, we said start with the problem, right? So if you are a mechanical type person and you see a problem, you will immediately start looking for a mechanical solution to the problem, and you will hesitate to go beyond your domain expertise where you feel comfortable, and people call this the psychological inertia. What you do not know while you're at this point is that the actual solution, the optimal solution, is actually a chemical solution. So by yourself, you're traveling in this area, you understand the problem, and you're going here, and you're going here, not knowing that the solution is over there. The only way you're going to create the optimal solution is, again, by reaching out. By reaching out and collecting lots of brains to work on a problem, which leads me to the concept of a hackathon that many of you may have heard of before in the context of software. So we're organizing, together with you, Washington University's first healthcare hackathon. And instead of me telling you, this is what a hackathon is and how it's run and so on and so forth, I want to tell you about the hackathon through an example. So this lady, who has zero business background, zero medical background, but loves dogs, comes to a hackathon, and she has read an article, and the article is about a French hospital which did some tests with 2 dogs, a particular type of dog, where the dogs were successfully trained to differentiate between the smell of urine from a prostate cancer patient than a patient's urine who does not have prostate cancer. And the dogs were trained as follows, here are the known cancer ones, and when they, smelled it, good boy, and when they, smelled it with the normal, then they did not get the candy, whatever, right? So it was just a training. We don't understand what's going on in the dog's nose. We just know that we can train them, and then they can tell us which one is cancer and which one is not cancer. So she comes and she says, I read this paper, isn't that just amazing? Person number one, lover of dogs, period. Biomedical engineer who's been looking at this stuff says, oh yeah, that's called biomimicry. The best inventions are made when we try to take something that's going on in nature, understand its principles, and then we try to make something that simulates what's going on in nature. The third person says, well, I am the manager of the tissue bank at this university, and we have as many samples as you need of prostate cancer patients' urine, and they're categorized in terms of the stage of the cancer, how bad was the cancer, etc., but I really don't know what to do with it. And then finally, the crux is, the chemical engineer says, oh, we have a machine in our laboratory called an ion mobility spectrometer that we use to detect explosives for the Department of Defense. We have a grant from the Department of Defense. So these people then get together at a hackathon, the tissue bank supplies the samples, the machine is trained, the machine is not trained, one more person is going to be involved, and that's the person like you who says, we have tremendous big data analysis capability. You give me the spectra, when you put this device onto a sample of urine, it creates a graph. You give me all that graph and say these ones were cancer, these ones were not cancer. I can crank through all that data and pick out what parameters are indicative of cancer. So these people only could have gotten together at a hackathon. In a silo, this could not have happened. So this is what we're trying to do through a hackathon. Now, as students, you can have your own hackathons. One of the things that we're hoping to do is to convert or to enhance, not convert, enhance, people told me this, the Whispers Library at Olin Library, the Whispers Cafe, and convert it into a center for innovation. You can still come, get your coffee, do your homework, but what you're going to see is a few students working on a whiteboard on something new, like this example, right? The chemistry student and so on and so forth. And you'll say, I wonder what they're talking about, and you'll move your chair closer to that whiteboard, and that will be a tiny little hackathon going on. That's our hope. I want to emphasize again this interdisciplinary nature. It's not all about, the medical student and the science person and so on and so forth. I gave this example probably in the first workshop. I had a tiny little company, and we were fighting against GE Medical Systems in our own little niche that we defined. So we defined the battlefield where we would fight GE. But to fight GE well, we hired a historian. Why would you hire a historian? A great historian, a deep thinker historian, because a historian, what does a historian understand? Strategy. He's made a career out of studying strategy. And so we needed a person who could help us in terms of, thinking deeply about what strategy we can deploy. It's not just about, putting things together and providing a device. Let's get back to the practical again. You're maybe saying to yourself, okay, I thought the topic was how am I going to find myself a good venture concept, so let's get back to that. The web is an incredible place, right? So Google already knows everything. It knows everything that I know, and it knows everything that all of us together know. So it's a matter of getting through the noise and getting to where the meat is. So I mentioned Y Combinator and Paul Graham. So they put out an article that says, startup ideas we'd like to fund. What a great gift for you. Go and read the article. How to get startup ideas. Go and read the article again. These are from credible sources. There is a site called Startup Universe. And what you do is you go to the site and you just enter your general area of interest, and you will get all the startups that are playing in that area. You will get information about who invested in them, how much did they get in investment, who are the founders, what do they do. All this information is available to you. There's another one called startupally.st. I'll give you by example. So an art student came to me and she said, well, I'm interested in entrepreneurship and I'm an artist. So I said, let's go to Startup List and type in art into the search box. And I think we had 26 startups listed whose description included the word art. So if you want to, stimulate your brain about ideas, I'm not saying take one and copy it, but deploy everything that I told you before. I'll take some of this and I'll twist it a little bit and then combine it with this one, and I'll be able to create something new in the area that I'm interested in. So that's the methodology. You can't, start with a white page and say, okay, come up with an idea. You can define an area of interest and then use these types of tools. Again, another startup site, f6s.com, where you can go and take a look to see what you can find of interest. Now, this is looking towards a little bit about the validation, which will be the next workshop. As I may have mentioned to you, I've never taken a business class. I consider myself an engineer and a scientist, just trying to deploy the skills that I learned in engineering and science to this area of business. So the scientific method, most of the students are probably already familiar with, which is extremely linear. The creative method is one of chaos. It's based on lots of ideas being poured in, making the type of connections that we talk about, making the kind of deviations that we talked about, and then judging and purging. So it's unlike the scientific method that you may be used to. One more thing. Why is venture concept selection so important? Your job, I'm talking mostly to the young people here, to the students, your job now is not to create, the expectation that we have is not that you this year create the next big thing. The expectation that we have from you is that you learn the tools necessary so that when you come up with the great idea further down the line in your life, that you'll be able to execute on it. Most successful startups are not created by 20-year-olds. I think the average age is 38 to 40. So you need to gain some life experience, and you need to, pay your dues and so on and so forth. So if I were in your shoes, and if I was 22, I'd emphasize learning much more so than execution. But now I shall tell you a story associated with this. So when I was that age, this is a little personal story, but I had a crush on this lady, a fellow student. Her name was Leanna, and being a shy person, I never approached her. But she must have detected this. So she came to me and she said, Emre, there's a badminton tournament, couples badminton tournament. Would you like to be my partner, on the tournament? And I said, of course, yes. And I had never, ever touched a badminton in my life. But here's the sad part. The next thing that I did, I swear to you this is true, was to go to the library, pick up a book on how to play badminton, and start reading the book on how to play badminton. Not like run down to the gym and pick up a badminton, but start reading about it. So that experience with Leanna, once we entered the tournament, showed me that the best way to learn something is not to read about it, but actually to do it, right? So to learn something, we first need to learn it with the right team, but more importantly, if I want to teach you basketball, and I give you a golf ball and say, okay, learn basketball, and here is your ball, we won't be very effective. So in my tortured analogy here, the ball is the venture concept. If you don't pick a venture concept that delivers you the breadth of difficulties and challenges that you will face, then we will not be able to do a great job in teaching you about entrepreneurship. So if you say, I'm just going to build one coffee shop that will generate enough money to avoid me having to, get a job, from an educator perspective, we will not be able to teach you everything about entrepreneurship. For example, how to set up a franchise model and how to scale it up, how to become a Starbucks. We're not advocating that you build a Starbucks, but learning how to build a Starbucks will prepare you much better when you have that type of opportunity. All of this because success is an incredibly rare exception. So this is, as I may have mentioned in the first workshop, this is what I struggle with, which is how do I not discourage, but at the same time, how do I not fool either? How do I become a mentor and a tormentor so that one is cognizant that these are the odds? We'll tell you about it in a second, but the success rate is about 6 out of 1,000. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult. So going back to my emotion and reason, I'm convinced that we can teach the reason side, but the emotion side is what the bottleneck is at. So, and I don't know how to teach it other than just by conversations and so on and so forth. But these are the odds that we're facing. Now, how do we do this without discouraging anybody? I mean, if anybody in the audience sees these numbers and says it's not worth trying, then you're doing yourself a great disservice, because this is the way you find out how good you really are. Do you belong in the 6 out of 1,000, or are you number 876? If you want to show that to yourself, if you want to prove to yourself that you belong in the 6 out of 1,000, then do entrepreneurship. Because you may be extremely smart analytically, a genius analytically, but if you can't talk to another person, you lack social intelligence, or you lack practical intelligence, or you lack creative intelligence, you do not belong in the 6 out of 1,000 as a three-dimensional human being, right? Not just an analytical genius. So if you want to test who you really are, entrepreneurship is the way to go. Lots of sites. We'll give these to you in the PowerPoint that we'll deliver to you. The things to keep in mind is these are essentially providing you with benchmarks, right? What other people are doing, and then your genius is going to be to do what I showed you, what my other students were doing, to do trend recognition, to do pattern recognition, to combine, deconstruct, reconstruct in another place, but you have lots of places to start from. I mean, there's an endless list of places that you can go to stimulate your brain, and the rest of the job is up to you. These types of things, so I know this is from 2011, but are things to watch in 2011. 3D printing. Absolutely. I've had so many applications for investment, for people interested in 3D printing. Africa's middle class. 100% absolutely. I've had people who are developing innovative new products for the African middle class. Apps beyond mobile and everything else, artsy, etc. So, when I look at this from 2011 and then compare it to the types of applications that I'm getting for investment, almost a one-to-one match. So, you know what everybody else is doing. Now the genius is, can you combine, coming clean with green with 3D printing? That's the genius that's required. That's the type of broad thinking and deep thinking that is necessary to win at this game. Okay, questions, comments, particularly pushback. Any part that you disagree with, that you see some flaws in, and so on and so forth. Yes, sir.
You said that you're organizing a hackathon.
Yeah.
Why don't you
So at the moment, it's a concept stage, but we're into doing, right, rather than planning and discussing and so on and so forth. So we'll pull the trigger, and if 6 people show up, fine. The first one, only 6 people showed up. So we're going to do it in April. And if you send me an email, I'm more than happy to recruit you for organizing, for promoting, for working with us, because each of us have these little, spheres of influence. For you, it may be your colleagues, your students in your department. We want everybody to be aware of this. I mean, this example of the urine samples and the dogs and the chemistry and so on and so forth, if I could get in front of every single person at WashU and say, we're going to have a hackathon, and this is what a hackathon is, I think we could create a large group of people coming. Now, how do we convey that type of belief and example in an email that you get amongst the 5 million emails that you keep receiving? How do you package that information in the record, say, so that people will see and respond? So, once again, we now need to think creatively. How do we crack that nut? So, think about it, and if you have great ideas about it, we'll give you all the credit for those great ideas. Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't know how to put this concisely, but as far as like when you look at the odds and being 6 out of 1,000, so when you look at those figures, is out of that population in which that percentage was drawn, did that mean 99.4% of those people didn't have the tools? So you said like it takes a certain kind of person, certain attributes, the combination of creativity and a large breadth of study. Are you saying only 0.6, or is it saying that only 0.6% of people have the proper tools, or is there an element of lottery to it? So I guess what I'm saying is going forward, if we focus on expanding our breadth, will it automatically put us closer to the 6%?
So I think I understand the question. So the data that I'm showing is just historical data, what has happened. The reasons as to why that has happened are again twofold. One is through analytic approach, the example that I gave of the life insurance industry. If we treat it as a serious matter, I'm also trying to give you a concise answer. So what's happened is that the money that's going into startups in a lot of cases is lazy money, easy money, real estate money, people who became wealthy not by creating great technology companies, but by people who bought some land and sat on it and then they became rich, or daddy gave them a big amount of money, and that money is now coming into the entrepreneurial world, and in my opinion at least, it's doing more damage than good. It's corrupting the system. It's making people think that it's easy money, and that we have these huge failure rates. If we were, as providers of capital, if we were much, much more careful by using these, life industry tools that are given to us, if we as teachers of entrepreneurship said to ourselves, we will never let a biology PhD leave Washington University with a Mickey Mouse biology dissertation, but we will let a Washington University entrepreneur leave Washington University with a Mickey Mouse business plan, which we do, I know we do, if we deploy the academic rigor that we have to entrepreneurship, we will be able to increase, one side, the hit rate on one side. The other side is much more subtle, so we've been having debates about whether this is teachable, detectable. I can tell myself personally, because of all the interactions that I've had, probably within a week of interactions with a founder, I can say whether he's got the tools, the demeanor, the structure to do this or not. The agony is enormous. I said this at some other workshop. I asked this question. People say, I raised $5 million. Congratulations, everybody can raise $5 million and spend it, especially if it's silly money. Did you ever lay there on a Thursday or Wednesday knowing that Friday is payroll and you can feel your stomach bleeding. Because only then do you make extremely smart decisions. Only then do you stretch the pennies as long as they're going to stretch. If you have 5 million sitting in the bank, there's no reason for your stomach to bleed. It's also other people's money. This forcing founders to think carefully and to stretch every penny, because that's the differentiation between a great entrepreneur and an entrepreneur wannabe. What we have seen historically, experimentally, is that the more money we give to a founder, direct correlation, the more stupid mistakes they will make. The less money we give to a founder, the smarter decisions they will make. It makes sense, it's just natural. So we are a class of investor that is, more than your show me state. We're like, pound the table and my stomach bled and yours is going to bleed too type of investors, but for the good of everyone actually, even for the founder. Silly money on positive just totally corrupts. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Okay, so we're kind of still, developing the background. I'm really anxious to get to the meat, which is that Excel that I showed you that to me is so effective in terms of both as a teaching tool, as a platform for conversation, reasoned conversation between a founder and an investor. I keep emphasizing investor, but I told this to you before, right? The number one investor is yourself, right? So you're going to take some chances, you're going to decline a job and so on and so forth. So replace investor by yourself. The investor, the word investor I'm using is somebody who's had more experiences, life experiences, than you have. So we're going to get there. In fact, next week, next workshop is called Validation, which is the application of these set of tools to acid test your venture concept really ruthlessly. And the reason why it's ruthlessly is we don't want you to waste time on a golf ball trying to learn basketball with a golf ball. If it's a golf ball, let's call it a golf ball, throw it away, and see if we can find you a basketball instead. Okay, I got 9 more minutes. And as you can tell, lots of stuff that I can talk about.
So what happened after the badminton game?
After the badminton
You got married and
yeah, no. Yeah, actually, we didn't do so bad, honestly. Yeah, which shows that, it's like, I shall learn badminton. It shows you flick the wrist, and I will flick my wrist. Just crazy, yeah. Let's see. I don't want to kill people's time yet because we're here. I want to make use of everything that we have. So this is Claire, and Claire was gracious enough to allow me to use what she did as an example in this class. Maybe we'll just turn it over to you, Claire, to tell the rest of the folks here how you used the tool, where we stumbled, was it of any use to you, what benefit you saw. I know that you just started off on it,
Yes.
but you're kind of our furthermost person. And the fact that yours was essentially starting off as a lifestyle company, and that these things about return on investment and so on may not have been so important to you. So could you talk to the class a little bit about your experience?
Okay. First of all, one of the things I think makes my business unique, possibly in this circumstance, is it really doesn't require a lot to start it up. I'm making telephone calls for biotech companies. So I have to have a telephone. I have to have a customer relationship management database and customers. And so how am I going to go about that? Well, I looked at the market and I had a hard time on total available market. And I know there's 573 new biotech companies in St. Louis. And Emory helped me in that I took what the cost of my service was and multiplied that by the number of biotech companies, and that's how we got the top figure. But that was one place I really stumbled on. I didn't have a clue as to where to find it. Annual market growth rate, we discussed a little bit because I really don't know what the growth rate will be. Biotech is a very growing industry though, so just for presumption's sake, if it stays where it's at, that these numbers proceed, if I understand you correctly. Then, I plan to have 16 customers a year. I based that on the interest that's come through so far, because I'm averaging about, well, at least every month, I've got 1 or 2 people looking at my product and interested in my services. And I projected that out. Now, this was probably the area, should I talk about it now? That created the most issue for me. And part of it was I'm familiar with business, and I know you lose about 70% of your business each year. And my projected numbers included 70% loss. So when I first plugged my numbers in, I was including that number. But if you look down the list a little bit, you see annual churn here at 75. So when you calculate the number, base your number of monetized units strictly on what's there, not a presumed number, other than the fact that you have to speculate what you think that's going to be. Anyway, the material cost per unit is the telephone that I buy for each campaign I do. It's $100 a month. Sales start in year 1. That I can't explain.
So let's generalize that. So first, the reason why we're asking for this. So it says sales start in year number 1 and sales start in month number what of whatever year that you put in there. In your case, it's very easy, but let's take one that requires an investment and some development time and so on, during which cash will be burned. So this number is very important to us, and that it's real and that it be realistic. In some cases, for a pharma company, this could be year number 7 and month number 1, and we need to be able to check whether the company is making assumptions about its survival up to that time. Time 0 is when you get for a company that's requiring an investment or some donation or something like that. Time 0 is when the money came in, if you need money, whether it's your money or other people's money, to the time that you can execute on the first sale. That delay time is important to us. Same with the sales cycle. So Claire is saying that it will take her 3 months from the first contact to selling a customer. Maybe you could talk about that, as well as the cost of customer acquisition, and then we'll wrap it up with those 2.
Wouldn't sales start in year be higher than sales start in month? The first year you'd have, say, 12, one a month or something.
So for example, if they have a good enough idea, let's say 18 months, so this would be 2, and this would be 6. Right?
Yeah.
The 6th month of the second year. Because all of these cells are being utilized by the backside of Excel to make all the calculations about what type of investment is going to be necessary for this company to get off the ground. Did I answer your question? Or?
I guess I must not be reading the chart right. Because.
So,
So you're going to be able to start selling in the first year?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Or is it going to take
Well, I thought it
till
was
the
number of
second?
units, so, okay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's where
Yeah,
you sort of have to
yeah.
So
adjust.
do sales and the revenue occur at the same time? Revenue received is different.
yeah,
right?
then we have this, which is,
So if you make the sale in month 3,
Yeah.
you realize the revenue in month 4.
yeah,
right?
so we have the receivable cycle as another
I got
entry
you.
here. So the sales is when you send the invoice out, and when you get
Got
the
it.
cash in is incorporated into the
I
model.
didn't see that. All right.
Okay, let's pause here for just 1 second, because in my 2 minutes left, I want to ask for some help in one other area.
Good job.
And the help that I want is the following, if any of you are interested, particularly the students. So my background is what one would, if we were being lazy, we would call it, commercial ventures. Even though it's a deep topic, the company that I started was doing medical devices for breast cancer. The only reason why I started that company was because it was an insult to my engineering sensibility, the options that we gave to a woman with breast cancer. It was horrible, and I said, I'm an engineer, I can fix this, so therefore I qualified myself as a social venture also, but that's beside the point. So the terminology, the language, and the construction of these questions needs to be transformed into language that is more appropriate for social ventures or for nonprofits. For example, I have this question, which would be important in a commercial sense. How likely is it for your company to be an acquisition merger target of a larger, more established company within the next 5 years? I need help from folks to translate this into the language of either a social venture or a nonprofit, as well as all other questions up above. The emphasis is a little bit more in the domain that I've lived in for such a long time. So anybody who can help me with that, please contact me again at this email, and then it may be an interesting exercise to see how we can translate the language. The same thing with the other Excels. Hey, Michael.
Good morning.
Michael, I want to introduce you. So, so this is Michael Page. He's a much newer employee than I am by 25%, which translates into 1 week. Yeah. He came 1 week after I did to Washington University. So we have an innovation and entrepreneurship team at Washington University. Michael, myself, Deidre Carter, Brad at Office of Technology Management, and Holden Thorpe, who is the provost. Our mission is to make Washington University known as an entrepreneurial university also.
And in a good way.
In a good way.
Yes.
Not just a research university, not just a great teaching university, but also an entrepreneurial university. Michael is a fantastic, fantastic resource. Would you introduce yourself real quick?
Emery's obviously been drinking. I said that with the camera on too. That's one for the ages. So my quick background is that I was a professor at Purdue for a bunch of years, where I was studying metastatic disease, breast cancer, and developing new therapeutics, specifically monoclonal antibody therapeutics. When the actually, I'll take a step back. Purdue tried to convince me to start a company. I had no interest whatsoever in entrepreneurship, and I'm like, no way, I'm not going to do this. And I found myself about a year after getting tenure accepting a job to start an oncology program at a small biotech company in Maryland. And the small biotech company turned out to be MedImmune, which became a big biotech company. It's now a few thousand people. And it was acquired by AstraZeneca a few months after I left, which was a story behind that. Then I went to a company called Functional Genetics. A guy named Stan Cohen, who, if anyone here has a science background, is a patent called the Boyer and Cohen patent. And that is the most lucrative patent in history. So if you're ever on Jeopardy, that's the one you can answer. He had started a second company around a novel technology, and we basically had to refocus it. They had been around for a while. I came on board and had to refocus it because the classic small biotech mistake when you have a technology is to go broad. So we went deep. So ran that for a number of years, put a few drugs in the clinic for this indication that absolutely no one cared about, called Ebola virus infection. And suddenly, I guess it's become popular. And was there for a few years when I went to Yale, where I spent most of the last 4 years, where we basically were addressing the valley of death. So there is a problem in that pharma has pulled out of research. And biotech had filled in that gap for a while, but biotech has pretty much gone away. And so now the question is, what's going to follow up on we're in a post-biotech era, and most people don't realize it. And so the question is, what are we going to do from here? And so we were trying to solve that, and we basically came here because there is an incredible opportunity for a university like this, which has not done much innovation or entrepreneurship in terms of commercialization, to do much, much better. So if we don't do it well, Emery and I will be looking for jobs.
I'll go back to Arizona.
Okay. I don't have a life in comedy, so I'm out of luck.
Okay, I think this is great.